The morning sun cast long shadows across Bakersfield, California, painting the vast ranch lands in shades of gold and amber. For generations, this had been cattle country, where a man's worth was measured not just by the size of his spread, but by the quality of his livestock. And nowhere was this truth more evident than at Hartwell Ranch, the crown jewel of Kern County, owned by William Big Bill Hartwell. Big Bill stood at 6'4", with shoulders broad enough to fill a doorway and a reputation that stretched 3 counties wide. His ranch sprawled across 15,000 acres of prime California real estate, home to some of the finest Black Angus cattle in the state. The Hartwell name was synonymous with champion bloodlines, record-breaking auction prices, and livestock that graced the tables of America's finest restaurants. This particular morning found Big Bill in his prize breeding paddock, scowling at the massive black bull that stood alone in the center pen. Onebolt, as he'd been named with such high hopes 2 years ago, was supposed to be the crown jewel of his breeding program. With champion bloodlines that cost Big Bill over $50,000, this bull should have been producing the next generation of prize-winning calves. Instead, Onebolt had become the ranch's most expensive disappointment. "Still won't mount the cows, boss," said Jake Wilson, Big Bill's ranch foreman, spitting tobacco juice into the dust. Jake had worked cattle for 30 years and had never seen anything like it. "We've tried everything. Different cows, different settings, even brought in that specialist from Sacramento. Bull just ain't interested." Big Bill's jaw clenched as he watched Onebolt graze peacefully, oblivious to the frustration he was causing. The bull was magnificent to look at, nearly 2,000 pounds of pure muscle, with a coat so black it gleamed blue in the sunlight. His conformation was perfect, his lineage impeccable. By all rights, he should have been worth his weight in gold. $50,000, Big Bill muttered, shaking his head. $50,000 for the world's most expensive pet. The veterinarians had run every test imaginable. Dr. Richards, the county's most respected large animal vet, had pronounced Onebolt physically perfect. "There's nothing wrong with him medically," he'd told Big Bill just last week. "Sometimes bulls just don't take to breeding. It's rare with his bloodline, but it happens." But Big Bill wasn't one to accept defeat easily. He'd built his empire through determination and calculated risks. The problem was, Onebolt represented neither determination nor calculated risk anymore. He was just dead weight, eating his way through $200 worth of premium feed every week. The irony wasn't lost on him, while Big Bill's prize bull remained stubbornly unproductive. Just 5 miles down the county road lived Marcus Thompson, a man whose troubles made Onebolt's breeding issues seem trivial by comparison. Marcus lived in what generous people might call a fixer-upper, and honest folks would describe as barely standing. The small farmhouse, inherited from his late father, sat on just 20 acres of land that had seen better decades. The paint was peeling in long strips, the roof leaked in 3 places during California's rare rainstorms, and the barn door hung crooked on rusted hinges that squeaked like wounded birds. But it was home to Marcus, his wife Sarah, and their 8-year-old daughter Emma. More importantly, it was all they had left of Marcus's family legacy, a legacy that seemed to be slipping away with each passing month. Unlike Big Bill's vast operations with their modern facilities and hired hands, Marcus ran a small-scale organic farm, selling vegetables at the local farmer's market and struggling to make ends meet. His herd consisted of 3 dairy cows, Bessie, Molly, and Sweet Pea, whose milk barely covered the monthly feed costs. The cows were getting older, their production declining, and Marcus knew he'd need to replace them soon. But replacement meant money he didn't have. This morning, Marcus stood in his cramped kitchen, staring at a pile of overdue notices that seemed to mock him from the worn wooden table. The bank was getting impatient about the mortgage payment, 3 months behind now. The feed store was threatening to cut off credit, and little Emma's school had sent home another notice about unpaid lunch fees that made his stomach twist with shame. "We'll figure it out, honey," Sarah said softly, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Even at 32, she still had the beauty that had caught Marcus's eye in high school, though worry lines had begun to appear around her warm brown eyes. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she wore the same faded blue dress she'd been wearing to town for 3 years. "We always do." Marcus managed a weak smile for his wife's benefit, but inside, He felt the weight of failure pressing down on him like a physical force. He'd been raised to believe that hard work and determination could overcome any obstacle. But lately, it seemed like the universe had different plans. Every morning brought new challenges, new bills, new reminders that his small farm was slowly dying. "Daddy, why do you look sad?" Emma asked, appearing in the doorway with her worn stuffed rabbit clutched in her arms. Her innocent blue eyes, so much like her mother's, carried a wisdom that no 8-year-old should possess. "Just thinking about grown-up things, sweetheart," Marcus replied, scooping her up in a hug that lasted longer than usual. "Nothing for you to worry about." But Emma was smart enough to sense the tension that filled their small house like smoke. The irony of their situations, Big Bill's expensive failure and Marcus's desperate need, was about to collide in the most unexpected way, thanks to a conversation that would take place at Murphy's feed store that very afternoon. Murphy's was the kind of place where farmers gathered not just to buy supplies, but to share gossip, complain about the weather, and occasionally conduct business deals over handshakes and coffee. The wooden floors creaked with the weight of decades, and the air smelled perpetually of grain dust, leather, and the strong black coffee that old Tom Murphy kept brewing in the back corner. Big Bill rarely graced Murphy's with his presence. He had people who handled such mundane tasks. His ranch manager usually dealt with supply runs, and his accountants handled the paperwork. But today was different. Today, his frustration with Onebolt had reached its boiling point, and he needed to vent to someone who would understand his predicament. The bell above the door chimed as Big Bill pushed inside, his massive frame blocking out the afternoon sunlight. Conversations died mid-sentence as every head in the store turned to look. It wasn't every day that William Hartwell graced the common folks with his presence. "Well, I'll be damned," muttered old Tom Murphy from behind the counter. "Big Bill Hartwell in my humble establishment. What brings you slumming with us regular folks?" Big Bill's jaw was set tight, a sure sign that his famous temper was simmering just below the surface. "That damn bull," he growled, not bothering with pleasantries. 2 years, Tom. 2 years of the finest feed, the best cows, perfect conditions. Nothing. The store's regulars exchanged knowing glances. Everyone in Kern County had heard about Big Bill's expensive breeding disaster. It had been the subject of whispered conversations and barely concealed amusement for months. "Sometimes nature has its own plans," offered Pete Carson, a weathered rancher who ran a modest operation north of town. "You can't force these things." Big Bill's eyes flashed dangerously. "Don't lecture me about nature, Carson. I've been breeding cattle since before you knew which end of a cow to milk. This bull is defective, plain and simple." "So what you gonna do with him?" asked Murphy, wiping his hands on his apron. "Sell him. Cut my losses. I've got a buyer coming from Nevada next week, but he's only offering $15,000. $15,000 for a bull that cost me $50,000. The amount was staggering to everyone present. $15,000 was more than most of them made in 2 years, yet Big Bill spoke of it like pocket change. At that moment, the bell chimed again, and Marcus Thompson stepped inside. If Big Bill's entrance had commanded attention, Marcus's arrival barely registered. He was just another struggling farmer, indistinguishable from dozens of others who frequented Murphy's. Marcus nodded politely to the gathered men and approached the counter. "Afternoon, Tom. I need to settle up my account." Murphy's expression grew uncomfortable. Marcus's account had been overdue for 6 weeks now, and everyone in the store knew it. The silence that followed was heavy with embarrassment. "Marcus," Murphy said quietly, "maybe we should talk about this in private." But Big Bill, still seething about his own problems, wasn't in the mood for discretion. "Jesus Christ, Thompson, if you can't afford feed, maybe you shouldn't be trying to run cattle." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Every eye in the store was on him now, and he felt his cheeks burn with shame. "I'm doing my best, Mr. Hartwell." "Your best?" Big Bill let out a harsh laugh. "Your best is 3 cows on 20 acres of dirt. Hell, I spend more on bull semen in a month than you probably make all year." The cruelty of the comment hung in the air like poison. Marcus's hands clenched into fists, but he forced himself to remain calm. He couldn't afford to make enemies, especially not of someone as powerful as Big Bill Hartwell. "Some of us weren't born with silver spoons, sir," Marcus said quietly. Big Bill studied Marcus for a moment, his business mind suddenly clicking into gear. Here was a man so desperate he couldn't even pay his feed bill. And Big Bill had a problem that needed solving. "You know what, Thompson?" Big Bill said, his voice taking on a calculating tone. "Maybe we can help each other out." Marcus looked up, surprised by the sudden change in Big Bill's demeanor. "I've got a bull I need to get rid of. Prime breeding stock, champion bloodlines, the whole package. Only problem is he's not interested in breeding. But hell, even a sterile bull can still work as a farm animal, right? Pull a cart, intimidate predators, whatever small-time farmers do with their livestock." The other men in the store exchanged glances. They could see where this was heading, and it didn't look good for Marcus. "I'm listening," Marcus said cautiously. Big Bill's smile was predatory. "I'll sell him to you for $10. The number seemed absurd. A bull worth $50,000 for $10? There had to be a catch. "What's wrong with him?" Marcus asked. "Nothing's wrong with him," Big Bill said truthfully. "He just won't breed. But for a small operation like yours, that might not matter. You're not running a breeding program anyway." Marcus's mind raced. $10 was still money he didn't have, but it was manageable. And a bull, even a non-breeding bull, would be valuable. Bulls were natural protectors of herds, and their presence alone could deter predators. More importantly, having a bull would give his small farm a legitimacy it currently lacked. $10 for a $50,000 bull, Marcus said slowly. $10 for a bull that won't do the one thing I bought him to do, Big Bill corrected. "Take it or leave it, Thompson. This offer expires when I walk out that door. If this story has touched your heart, please hit that like button. It really helps us share these amazing tales with more people. And if you want to see more incredible stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We've got so many more inspiring stories coming your way." Marcus felt every eye in Murphy's feed store boring into him as he weighed Big Bill's offer. $10 for a bull that had cost $50,000. It seemed too good to be true, which in his experience usually meant it was. But desperation has a way of making even bad decisions look attractive. "I need to think about it," Marcus said, buying himself time. Big Bill's expression hardened. "There's nothing to think about, Thompson. It's $10 for a bull, or you walk out of here empty-handed like always." The insult stung, but Marcus forced himself to consider the practical implications. Even if Onebolt never bred a single calf, having a bull would transform his small operation overnight. Bulls commanded respect at livestock markets, and other farmers took you seriously when you had real breeding stock, even if that stock was defective. More importantly, Marcus had been thinking about expanding into beef cattle for months. His 3 dairy cows were aging, and their milk production was declining. A bull could be the foundation of something bigger, something that might finally pull his family out of poverty. "Does he have any health problems?" Marcus asked. "Clean bill of health from Dr. Richards just last month," Big Bill replied. 2,000 pounds of prime beef, perfect conformation, champion bloodlines going back 4 generations. His daddy was Thunder Ridge champion, cost me $30,000 at auction 5 years ago. The pedigree was impressive, even to Marcus's untrained ear. Thunder Ridge champion was a name he'd heard whispered with reverence at cattle shows. "And he just won't breed?" "Won't even look at a cow twice," Jake Wilson chimed in from across the store. "Acts like he's too good for them or something." Big Bill shot his foreman a warning glare, but the damage was done. The admission that even Big Bill's own people found the situation bizarre gave Marcus pause. "What if I can't handle him?" Marcus asked. "I mean, I've got dairy cows, not bulls. What if he's aggressive?" "Gentlest bull I've ever seen," Big Bill said, and for once his voice carried a note of genuine honesty. "Never charged anyone, never damaged property. Hell, he acts more like an oversized pet than a breeding bull. That might actually be your problem solved and mine too." Old Tom Murphy, who had been listening to the exchange with growing concern, finally spoke up. "Marcus, son, maybe you should talk this over with Sarah before making any big decisions." But Marcus was already reaching for his wallet. The worn leather contained exactly $14.37, his family's entire liquid assets. Taking out $10 would leave them with less than $5 to their name, but something in his gut told him this was an opportunity that wouldn't come again. "I'll take him," Marcus said before he could change his mind. The words fell into silence like stones into deep water. Even Big Bill seemed surprised by the quick acceptance, though he recovered rapidly. "Smart man," Big Bill said, extending his hand. "Jake, go get the papers from the truck. We'll transfer ownership right now." As Jake headed outside, Marcus counted out 10 $1 bills with hands that trembled slightly. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. In 30 seconds, he'd gone from owning 3 aging dairy cows to owning a bull with championship bloodlines. "You sure about this, Marcus?" Pete Carson asked quietly. "Bulls ain't like dairy cows. They got their own minds about things, I'm sure," Marcus said, though his voice wavered slightly. Jake returned with a folder full of paperwork, and the transfer of ownership was completed with surprising efficiency. Big Bill's signature was bold and confident, while Marcus's was careful and precise. When it was done, Marcus held a certificate declaring him the legal owner of a bull worth more than his house. "One more thing," Big Bill said as he prepared to leave. "You'll need to transport him yourself. I'm not running a delivery service." The practical reality hit Marcus like a sledgehammer. He didn't own a cattle trailer, and renting one would cost more than he'd just paid for the bull. His old pickup truck couldn't handle hauling a 2,000-pound animal, and he certainly couldn't afford to hire professional livestock transport. "How am I supposed to get him home?" Marcus asked, panic creeping into his voice. Big Bill shrugged. "Not my problem anymore. You bought him, you figure it out." He paused at the door and turned back with a cruel smile. "Good luck, Thompson. You're going to need it." After Big Bill left, the store erupted in conversation. Some men thought Marcus was crazy, others felt sorry for him, and a few openly wondered if he'd just been swindled by one of the county's most ruthless businessmen. "I got a stock trailer," Pete Carson said finally. "It's old, but it'll hold a bull. I could help you transport him tomorrow morning if you want." Marcus felt a surge of gratitude toward the weathered rancher. "I'd appreciate that more than you know, Pete. What do I owe you?" "Nothing," Pete said firmly. "Sometimes neighbors help neighbors. That's how things work out here." The drive home was a blur of second-guessing and nervous excitement. Marcus had never owned anything as valuable as Onebolt, and the responsibility felt overwhelming. What if the bull got sick? What if he couldn't afford to feed him? What if Big Bill had somehow cheated him? But underneath the worry was something Marcus hadn't felt in months. Hope. When he pulled into his driveway, Sarah was hanging laundry on the line behind the house. She looked up as his truck approached, and Marcus could see the question in her eyes even from a distance. "Sarah," he called as he got out of the truck, "we need to talk." She walked over, wiping her hands on her apron. "You look like you've seen a ghost, honey. What happened in town?" "I bought a bull." Sarah's expression went through several rapid changes: confusion, concern, and finally something approaching panic. "Marcus Thompson, please tell me you didn't do something foolish with money we don't have." "I bought a bull," Marcus repeated. "From Big Bill Hartwell, $50,000 champion bloodline bull." "How much?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. $10. The number seemed to hang in the air between them like a bridge neither of them was sure they could cross. $10 for a $50,000 bull? Sarah said slowly. "Marcus, what's wrong with it?" "He won't breed," Marcus said simply. "That's it. He's healthy, gentle, perfect in every way except he has no interest in cows." Sarah stared at her husband for a long moment, processing the information. "So we now own a 2,000-pound pet?" "We own a bull with champion bloodlines," Marcus corrected. "Even if he never fathers a single calf, having him changes everything. People will take us seriously now. We can expand into beef cattle, maybe start a real operation." Before Sarah could respond, Emma came running around the corner of the house, her blonde pigtails bouncing. "Daddy! Daddy! Are we really getting a bull?" Mrs. Henderson heard it on her radio scanner. Someone at Murphy's called their wife about it. News traveled fast in small farming communities, and Marcus realized that by tomorrow morning, everyone in the county would know about his $10 purchase. The next morning arrived gray and overcast, with the kind of cool dampness that made every joint ache. Marcus had barely slept, alternating between excitement and terror about what he'd committed himself to. At 7 a.m. sharp, Pete Carson's truck pulled into the driveway, towing an ancient but sturdy livestock trailer. "Morning, Marcus," Pete called out. "You ready to go collect your investment?" The drive to Hartwell Ranch took 20 minutes, and with each passing mile, Marcus's nervousness grew. What if Onebolt was aggressive despite Big Bill's assurances? What if there were hidden problems that wouldn't manifest until later? What if this was all some elaborate practical joke? But when they arrived at the ranch, Jake Wilson was waiting by the breeding paddock with a halter and lead rope. Onebolt stood in the center of the pen, magnificent and imposing, his black coat gleaming even in the overcast light. "There's your bull," Jake said with something approaching respect in his voice. "I'll be honest with you, Thompson, I'm gonna miss the big guy. He's got more personality than most people I know." Loading Onebolt into the trailer proved surprisingly easy. The bull walked up the ramp like he was taking a Sunday stroll, settled into the trailer with calm dignity, and stood quietly as Jake secured the gates. "He travels well," Jake observed. "Never gave us any trouble on transport. Feeds twice a day, prefers Timothy hay to alfalfa, and he likes his water fresh. Don't let the tank get stale or he'll turn his nose up at it." The advice was more than Marcus had expected, and he found himself genuinely grateful to Big Bill's foreman. The trip back to Marcus's farm became a parade. Word had spread through the farming community like wildfire, and it seemed like half the county had found reasons to be on the roads that morning. Pickup trucks pulled over to watch the trailer pass, and Marcus could see people pointing and talking. At Murphy's feed store, a small crowd had gathered to watch the procession. Old Tom Murphy waved from his doorway, and several farmers tipped their hats in acknowledgement. For the first time in years, Marcus felt like he belonged in the community instead of hovering on its edges. When they arrived at Marcus's farm, Sarah and Emma were waiting in the yard, along with what appeared to be most of their neighbors. The Henderson family from 2 farms over had walked across the fields to witness the arrival, and even cranky old Mr. Jeffries had made the trip from his place down the road. Unloading Onebolt was as smooth as loading him had been. The bull stepped down from the trailer, surveyed his new surroundings with calm interest, and walked directly to the water trough for a long drink. "Well, I'll be damned," whispered Pete Carson. "He acts like he owns the place already." Emma was enchanted. "He's beautiful, Daddy. Can I pet him?" "Not yet, sweetheart," Marcus said carefully. "We need to let him settle in first." But Onebolt seemed to have other ideas. The massive bull finished drinking and walked directly toward the fence where the crowd had gathered. Instead of displaying the aggressive behavior everyone expected, he stopped just short of the fence and lowered his great head, almost as if he were bowing. Emma clapped her hands in delight. "He's saying hello!" Over the following weeks, something remarkable began to happen. Onebolt didn't just adapt to his new home, he transformed it. His presence in the small pasture gave the farm an immediate legitimacy that years of hard work had failed to achieve. But more than that, Onebolt seemed to understand his role as protector. When coyotes appeared at the edge of the property, the bull would position himself between the predators and the dairy cows, his massive presence enough to send the scavengers looking for easier prey. Local farmers who had previously dismissed Marcus as a weekend hobbyist began stopping by to admire the bull and discuss cattle breeding. Feed store owners who had been reluctant to extend credit suddenly found payment terms more flexible. Even the bank manager, Mr. Patterson, made a special trip to the farm to assess the livestock situation. "That's a fine animal you have there, Thompson," Patterson said, eyeing Onebolt with obvious appreciation. "Substantial collateral value, even if he never produces offspring." 3 months after the purchase, Marcus was approached by a cattle broker from Nevada who had heard about the $10 bull and wanted to make an offer. "I'll give you $25,000 for him," the broker said without preamble. Cash, no questions asked. Marcus looked across the pasture where Onebolt was peacefully grazing alongside Bessie, Molly, and Sweet Pea. The bull had become more than just livestock. He was family. Emma had named him Gentle Giant and spent hours sitting by the fence talking to him. Sarah had grown fond of his calm presence, and even Marcus found himself looking forward to their morning routine of feeding and checking on the animals. "He's not for sale," Marcus said firmly. The broker seemed surprised. "30,000? Not for sale at any price." As months turned to years, Onebolt never did show interest in breeding, but he gave the Thompson family something more valuable than offspring. He gave them hope, respect, and a future they never could have imagined. The small farm prospered, not because of cattle breeding, but because owning a bull with champion bloodlines opened doors that had previously remained closed. Marcus was able to secure better contracts for his organic vegetables, join the County Cattlemen's Association, and eventually expand his operation to include a small but profitable beef cattle herd, using artificially inseminated cows rather than natural breeding. Emma grew up with stories of the day Daddy bought a $50,000 bull for $10, and she would tell anyone who would listen that sometimes the best investments are the ones that pay you back in ways you never expected. And Big Bill Hartwell? He never forgot about the transaction, though he rarely spoke of it. Sometimes, driving past the Thompson farm and seeing Onebolt in the pasture, he wondered if maybe Marcus Thompson had gotten the better end of that deal after all. But that's a story for another day. The bull that wouldn't breed had found his purpose not in creating life, but in changing it. And sometimes, that's the most valuable gift of all. Rich farmer sold a rejected bull for $10 to a poor man. What happened next shocked everyone.